Welcome back to Society Case Files. My name is Robert, and today I'm going to talk about Dune Awakening. If you like this kind of content and you want to see more, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Otherwise, I'm going to dive right in. If you're unfamiliar with Dune Awakening, it's a survival MMO by the people who made Conan Exiles. Basically, they created an alternate timeline where Paul Atreides was never born, and there's all kinds of strife going on. You've come to Arrakis to find out what's going on with the Fremen, and basically you're an agent of the Bene Gesserit, and they give you something to do. And thus you end up on the desert planet where you build bases and do all kinds of crazy stuff. I can tell you that I almost didn't play because right off the bat, I was put off by a whole lot of stuff. First off, some of their videos are a little pretentious. They really go above and beyond to just talk it up in a way that just seemed a little much, almost like someone was told, hey, you got to come up with something good. I don't want to hear just, we worked really hard. I want to hear some genuine trials that you went through in order to do whatever it is that you did for the game. And that was just, it was a little ridiculous. But that said, having played it for as long as I have, they kind of deserve to be that way. I'll get into that in a moment. Couple that with the fact that it wasn't the most intuitive game on the planet either. When I started building, I couldn't figure certain things out, and the tutorial didn't really help as much as it could. So for example, when you're building, if you're using a mouse and keyboard, you have to hit the right mouse button to change whether you're building, moving things, or destroying them. I didn't quite get that from the tutorial. Now, to be perfectly fair, maybe I'm a complete idiot. I don't know. But regardless, my initial impression of the game was poor. Now, I had spent a lot of money on it, and it took me more than 2 hours to get to the point that I was kind of annoyed. So I was like, you know what? I'm going to push on. I'm going to see what happens, because in order to get into the early access that I played, you had to at least buy the middle tier, which was $70. So I wasn't too keen to just write that off, and here I am now, so completely addicted, it's absurd. I'm sure people would like to compare it to Conan Exiles because that would make sense, but it really is pretty different in many ways. The building looks a little bit similar, but they've stripped down the conditions you have to worry about. You pretty much only got to be concerned with hydration and then essentially sunstroke. When your heat gets too high, you start to lose hydration quicker. Whereas in Conan, you had to worry about food, hydration, warm, cold, all kinds of stuff. They really have simplified it a lot in Dune Awakening, and I think that's because there's just so many other things to do. In Conan, there weren't really the same type of quests that you get in Dune, and in Dune you get NPCs and all kinds of other stuff. So they really did work more on an MMO than a simple survival game. And I think that everything they learned from Conan, they applied here. So while the DNA might be there, it's still its own thing, and its own thing is great. But I'm going to break this down into some sections so that we can keep it at least somewhat organized. We'll start with the graphics. I personally love them. They look really good. The character models are stylized, which I think gives them longevity. Whenever they try to make them realistic for the moment of making the game, then they can quickly become outdated. And in this case, they have a really cool look to them that I think will last for quite a few years. The sky domes are fantastic. They just look absolutely majestic. The day cycle, it's a little less exciting because it's mostly just blue sky. But at night, you get the shot of the moon and all kinds of other stuff. It's just really cool, especially when spaceships are coming down and one gets shot out of the air and it crashes and there's huge fire everywhere. And then the worms. Worms will figure prominently throughout this review, but when a worm comes and just swallows one of those downed ships, it's pretty fantastic. And those things are actually really terrifying. They did a fantastic job of using the scenery and everything about it to just feel isolated and adrenalized whenever you hear a sound that might be a worm or whatever, even just other people who want to take you down. So I think the graphics are really, really good. I could probably see some arguments to the contrary, but they really worked for me. The animations coupling on with that are also very solid, although lag does screw them up once in a while. But let's talk more specifically about animations. The combat animations themselves are really cool. I like them. Some are a little bit long, and I've heard people complain about that. And in some cases, it could get kind of frustrating. For example, when someone does a combo on you and you're staggered, or you just can't block in the middle of the combo, so you just got to take it. That sucks. But by and large, the animations do contribute to the excitement of the action. You know, it also comes down to things like climbing and moving, and all of those things are really, really neat. When you're climbing, it doesn't look ridiculous. When you're using your suspensor belts or one of your tools that allows you to basically float, or some of your powers that you could use a grappling hook or run really fast, it all looks awesome. They really did spend a good amount of time on these things. The vehicles are really neat. I haven't flown an ornithopter, but I've seen one in game and I've watched some videos. They look really fun. The bike is very cool, although it can be a little ridiculous because if it bounces off of something even small on the ground, it can send it kind of reeling. You can flip it while you're on it, basically crushing your head, and you're totally fine, no damage. You just continue on like nothing happened. And I don't know. I mean, on one hand, yeah, I'd prefer not to be murdered every time my bike flipped because the ground was slightly uneven, but it does take away from the immersion just a little bit. Let's talk about classes and skills. Eventually, you can unlock all of the skill trees in the game. You can find a trainer in the world that will help you to learn whatever other classes are out there. For instance, I started off as the Bene Gesserit. I went and found somebody who was able to give me the Trooper skill line. And I've also learned the Planetologist skill line. You can find all of them eventually. But that said, I think that the one you start with is probably viable. I've only tried the Bene Gesserit and the Swordmaster. My friend is the Trooper. He's described some of the things you get: the grapple hook, the grenade. The Swordmaster has this amazing power where they throw their knee at someone and pretty much kill people in one hit. The Bene Gesserit has the voice that can stagger people, and then a super speed power. There's a good amount of variety, and I think that they're all fun in their own way. In particular, I started the game as a Swordmaster, played through until I got my first base. Then my friend was like, hey, we're moving to a different server so that we can play with everybody we know. And at that point, I rented a server just to try it out, just to see what it was like. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. But while I did that, I chose the Bene Gesserit and I became addicted. Those powers were just so much fun, particularly in the sense that when people are wearing a shield, you have to be able to stagger them in order to use the slow blade to take them out. If you're a Bene Gesserit, you can use the voice to stagger them instantly and then take them out without having to worry about doing a block. So that was kind of fun. And it did make the beginning of the game a little easier when you ran into one of those opponents. That said, I think that you'd probably have fun with any of them. And if you've played for too long, then you don't want to have to start over, for example, then you can just find the right person to train you in whatever skill tree you wanted and respec and then spend your points there if you'd like. But I'm pretty sure you're going to get all the skill points you need. Eventually, you get to a point where you can't spend more points without going to an advanced trainer. And those will take you to do quests that are quite a bit higher level, pushing you into sections of the game that are probably beyond you when you first get them. Like, I could do my advanced training right now, but the place to go is so far away that I'm just not comfortable even trying it quite yet. That's probably just because I'm a coward. But to be honest, it does look a little crazy to get up there. And when you start traveling, which we'll talk about in a minute, you can find yourself in a position where the point of no return feels ominous. But anyway, classes and skills are awesome in this game. I think you'll have fun with whichever one you pick. And if you don't like the one you did, then you can always pick another. Let's move on to combat. So just to be that guy, I'm going to compare a little bit to Conan. The combat in Conan for me always felt a little bit loose, like when you swing the sword and hit stuff, it didn't always feel like there was a good impact to it. They've corrected that problem here because every time you hit someone, every time you fire your weapon and you score a hit, it feels good. I think that they did a great job of incorporating real ranged combat with the cool guns and all that stuff. And once you get your hands on a personal shield, it just changes the dynamic so much. There's a lot of games where you have a shield that has to be diminished before you can be hurt. But in this game, they follow the lore very well, and that shield cannot be penetrated until someone hits it with a slow attack. And what's even more interesting is that you have a power bar that keeps it up. So, I mean, technically, you can't just stand there and be hosed down by fully automatic fire forever. It does go down, but it doesn't go down fast. You actually have a good amount of time with that shield, which I thought was awesome. I was concerned that the shield would just get ripped up pretty fast. Same with your power supplies when you're doing things like using your suspensor belt or whatever. But no, they actually allow you to be pretty good, and the technology is great. So you combine that with some of your skills like the grenade for the trooper, the crazy maneuvers with the sword master, or the voice with the Bene Gesserit, and you can do all kinds of crazy stuff, from stunning people to making them stand still to scaring them. There's just a lot of really good options. So the tactics are available, and there is some decent theory crafting. Now, it's not a lot. You can only have 3 powers slotted at a time, and even that is really only after you've gone to a certain point in the game where you unlock the 3rd one. For the most part, you're stuck with 2. Then you have some techniques, which are stuff you don't actually use, but you have to slot, and then there's passives. So combat primarily relies upon the basic standard attacks, whether you're swinging your weapon with light attacks or holding it down for a heavy attack. You can block or dodge, and then when you have a gun, you can aim. You can get different ones that allow you to fire fully automatic. There's some basically shotguns and that kind of stuff. But then you use your powers, they're cooldown hits. You've got some time. You might want to run away. You may need that power in order to fight these guys off. So you'll need to use your suspensor belt or something to escape them for a time and move around. And they won't chase you to the ends of the earth either, which is nice. They do break aggro eventually, and you can get away. But I think that the combat is super fun. I love using the suspensor stuff and jumping around to different parts of the base that you're fighting in, whether you go up high and start shooting at guys or take cover. It's all really good, and the AI isn't terrible. Sometimes they have flanked me and done pretty smart stuff that drove me out of a position that I thought was really good. So all around, I think you'll have fun with combat. Even after 30 hours, I'm not bored of it, and I look forward to engaging in more fights. So there you go. Building and resource management is up next. Building is always a staple of a survival MMO, and Conan had a lot of stuff going for it when it came to that. I always loved building bases in that game. It was kind of frustrating when a purge would come and just tear it up. That doesn't really seem to be the problem in Dune. They do have a thing where you have to pay taxes in order to maintain your property, but I think that that's relatively simple to overcome. I'll talk about it in a moment. All around, though, you can really get creative with these, and the resources aren't insane to get something done. You can get quite a bit of the stone required to build your walls and all that stuff in short order. And nicely, for once, you don't have to get a completely different material to do an upgraded look. So in Conan, if you wanted to go to the next level from basically a stone hut, you needed to use a different material completely to build the walls. In this, at least so far, my second level stuff is using the exact same material as the first. So that's been very nice. As far as what you can build, well, there's a lot of bricks out there, as you can imagine, because, I mean, quite frankly, the inside needs to be accessible. You don't necessarily want to build rooms like you're creating a house, because you want to be able to get to all of your stuff that you're using quite easily. So a lot of open floor plans end up getting made. Now, I created a basement in my new one and an attic and all kinds of crazy stuff, and it wasn't that difficult at all. I did have an issue today where something happened to my base, and I'm not entirely sure what, but a couple of walls were just missing. And in my effort to fix it, I ended up having to rebuild it from scratch. But what really sucked was I inadvertently, and I'm 95% sure this was my fault, I inadvertently destroyed some of my storage containers. They had stuff in them that decayed really fast, and I lost that stuff. I'm not even entirely sure what all I lost from it, but I'm trying not to think about it too much. There have been a few bugs. We'll talk about that in a moment too. But for the most part, I hadn't encountered anything like that until just this morning as of this video. But when it comes to resource management, it's done pretty well this time because once you've got it in your base, you put it in storage containers, it's linked to all of the stuff you have in there. The only time that it doesn't really work out very well is if you're crafting stuff personally. If you go into your personal crafting menu as opposed to using the fabricators, then you do need to have the items in your inventory. So if you want to make some ammo, you've got to have the scrap metal in your inventory to make that, as opposed to if you just want to leave it in whatever storage container it's in, you've got to go to a fabricator and have it make the ammo, but then you've got to take it out of there. So it's a little convoluted. I kind of wish that if you were in the base, then you could just use whatever's in the chest without having to, go and find it, but it is what it is. For the most part, they've done a much better job in this than they did in Conan, and it makes it a lot easier to get things done. But again, just as another reminder of what happened to me, if something falls on the ground, pick it up fast because mine decayed super quick. I'm not talking I wasn't playing for freaking hours. I'm talking it happened in less than 20 minutes. If I'm wrong about that, if I lost time and someone knows for a fact that the decay time is longer than that, please let me know in a comment so that folks can have corrected information there. But my perspective was it went very quick. Now, all that said, you can do some pretty impressive stuff with building, and it only gets more insane the later you go. You'll be able to build these crazy shield walls that you can go in and out. You can stake bigger claims and pretty much make palatial estates. So the building is wide open and there's lots to do with it. So super fun. One of my favorite parts. The next thing I'm going to talk about is some of the environment stuff and what you have to do in it. And I'm talking storms, worms, and gathering resources. So we've already talked about how you manage them in your base, but when it comes to going out and getting them, many of them are pretty easy. Like, for example, if you need stone, you just got to go and find the specific rock formations out there, scan it, find an easy way to break it down, and you get quite a bit. They aren't remotely stingy. I mean, you could hop out and in less than 5 minutes have more than enough stone to build a whole lot of your base, which is really nice. Of course, you've got to be close to those resources, and in some cases, you won't necessarily find the one you're looking for. Now, those are the basic resources. When it comes to the more advanced ones, those require you to do some pretty interesting stuff, whether it's delve into a dungeon or find a specific part of the map or even risk your life going out into the open sands. There are some crazy things that you need to get. Like, for an example, there is flower sand, which is basically indicated by like white clouds coming off the sand itself. You can go out there and you can just farm it with your bare hands, which is probably the safest route. But you've also got this stick that when you blast it, it comes up to the surface and you get quite a bit more. Of course, the threat is that you will encounter a sandworm because they will feel the vibrations and they'll come to eat you. Worms are a prevalent threat whenever you're on the open sands, and there's a whole bunch of ways that they can have an advantage to take you down. So when you get to the point that you need flower sand, for an example, you do have to become vulnerable in order to collect it. It does not drop in sufficient quantities from other people in order for you to get enough. You do have to eventually get out there and put your life on the line for this stuff. Other things are a little bit RNG, like you'd have to go and find complicated machinery. That requires you to go to a settlement, hopefully find some kind of device that they have there where you can loot that stuff. You get anywhere from like 10 to 20 in a single drop, but it will mean that you've got to get into some combat. You've got to do a whole bunch of stuff to get it, and sometimes it's not there. So it's a little bit of a hit or miss as far as farming is concerned. Then there is water. Again, I've said that hydration is pretty much the primary thing you have to worry about in this game as far as conditions are concerned. But water also contributes to making several things. So in order to make iron ore, you've got to use water. In order to make, actually anything past the beginning stuff requires water in order to be created. So since you have to drink water a lot and you have to use it to make stuff, it's imperative that you find ways to collect quite a bit of this. Now, the surefire way to get water early on in the game and through to the point that I'm playing is to collect blood from your enemies and then process that into water. It's very Fremen. And it isn't that big of a deal. And I'm going to tell you, at one point, I decided, you know what, I'm going to solve the water problem completely. I crafted as many of the containers for blood as I could, and then I went out and I just swept half the map of the beginning area to get as many as I could. This didn't just get me a lot of the blood, it also got me tons of other great resources. Solaris, the money in the game, and just some of the Fremen stuff that you need. It was actually really fun to do too, because it did take several in-game days. So I was running around during the day, trying to avoid the sun, running around at night, avoiding the Sardaukar. I'm in a still suit, so I'm able to process my water fairly well, but I still needed to live off the land a little bit. All around, it was a really cool adventure, and by the time I got back, I really did solve the water problem for a very, very long time. I had plenty to make everything I needed, and it probably only took me two and a half hours. In fact, one of my streams that is on the channel right now is of that run, so you can actually go and watch, and it did take quite a while, and you could just see what it was like. And again, I thought it was super fun. Now let's talk more about the worms though. So when you're traveling on the open sand, you'll have a little meter that shows that the worm is aware that you're making vibrations on the sand that could potentially attract a worm. Now, you can do things that will enhance your chances of having such an encounter. For example, there's this drum sand that when you're traveling over it, the vibrations become a lot more intense and the worm will come faster. I've actually summoned one that way. I drove right through it, managed to get to the other side, turned around, and a worm had just eaten that whole area. It was really intense. The other thing that can really screw you up is quicksand, because it will pretty much end you. You get very stuck, and in some cases, a worm will come while you're stuck and you can't get out. This is exactly what I trained for as a kid, though, with all those quicksand threats in shows, cartoons, and movies. So I've always been terrified of quicksand, and for once that has mattered. So I'm very aware of the map and keeping track of that stuff. I only got stuck once, but I was right on the edge and I was able to get right back out. So while it is dangerous and it is scary, it is preventable. Just pay attention. Even just going out in the open sand brings on some adrenaline, but I think it would suck big time to be eaten by a worm. It hasn't happened to me yet, knock on wood, but a friend has been eaten a couple of times, and you do lose everything on your character. All of your gear, all of your tools, anything you are wearing, anything in your inventory, it's gone permanently. The worm has had a meal, and you provided it. Now, I'm not quite sure it would be ruin the game bad, because most of the things you're carrying, you should be able to replace fairly easily. Even unique stuff isn't that hard to go and find again, but it's kind of up to you to determine how much your time is worth when it comes to that sort of thing. Because technically speaking, it is a waste of time. I mean, you get eaten, you lose maybe some really awesome armor. You've got to go out and find those materials again, which probably means building some downgraded stuff just to get through it. So that's up to you. I think the adrenaline is crazy. It hasn't happened to me yet, so I'm not sure how I'll take it. But I am trying to make sure that I have backups of everything, because you do have to travel over the open sand quite often. When it comes to just traveling in general, when you're doing it in the day, you really do want to stick to the shadows as much as possible, because once you get up into the highest ranges of the heat thing, then it does drain your hydration really fast. At night, you have to worry about the Sardaukar. They've got these spaceships basically flying around, casting light down on the sand. If you get caught in that light, they'll freeze you with this weird purple beam, and you can't move, and then a bunch of troopers drop down. At that point, you can run around. They'll try and keep you in the light, and you have to fight them. And they persist after dawn. They will hunt you to the ends of the earth. I mean, they won't necessarily chase you forever, but they have been around for a long time after I've had a fight or gotten into the day. I mean, halfway through the day, I found some Sardaukar still lingering around the area I got caught. It's kind of funny. They aren't that bad, but it is annoying. Whenever you get frozen or stunned in a game, it's just annoying. I don't care what game you're playing. It's just frustrating. And when that happens in this, it is annoying. But that said, it is avoidable. Just pay attention. Do your best to stay away from those spaceships, and you should be fine. The nice thing about traveling at night, of course, is you don't have to worry about your hydration going down as fast, and you can stick to the shadows and do your thing. Contracts and settlements. So one of the things that separates this from the survival game of Conan is that you have settlements with NPCs that you can go and buy stuff and communicate with, take on contracts, which are just quests in the game. And there's a certain amount of resources that you'll get from them, whether it's money or experience or even unique weapons and that sort of thing. Some of them are actually pretty long too. I did this one where I had to do some kind of vengeance for a guy, and we started out with one quest and it progressed to another, and it just escalated until I had to pretty much go into a settlement and take out a whole bunch of guys. It was super fun. Settlements can also be bigger cities like Harco Village and Arakeen, where you go and there's an actual city and people walking around, and your advanced trainers are there, the people who can help you get the higher levels of skills. There's a bank where you can put your money so that even if you get eaten by a worm, you still have it. You can use it in the other settlements as credit, so it's really cool. It's kind of like having a debit card. You can also go there to pay your imperial taxes, which if you don't pay those, then your base can actually be destroyed by Sardaukar. Your shields can be taken down. The sandstorms will actually harm the base. It's mostly there to clean the desert from people who stop playing. The prices aren't super high, but later on in the game, when your bases are quite big, you can find yourself in a very difficult position because you'll need a lot of money to keep those up. And if your financial supply is cut off, then you can actually lose your base really fast. At least that's what I've read. I'm obviously not there, but that's information that I picked up from folks who played the beta extensively. The story mission in the game is effectively that you are an agent of the Bene Gesserit sent to Arrakis to figure out what happened to the Fremen. I guess they're somewhere to be found, so you'll start doing these series of trials to learn about them. I've got 3 left to go, so I'm not sure what happens at the end, but so far they've been really cool. They're mostly just lore events that have some walking simulator, a few puzzles here and there, but nothing too crazy. It doesn't seem like you can fail. I did try it after doing the first trial 3 times. On the third one, I just tried to run through it to see what would happen if I did take damage from the things, and it just reset me at a checkpoint over and over again. So it does look like you can pretty much do it at your pace, and you shouldn't have anything to worry about. You can also join either House Atreides or House Harkonnen and do missions for them. Shout out for the character that you meet from Atreides. It is voiced by the guy who played Garrus from Mass Effect. I thought that was awesome. Basically, they give you contracts that improve your reputation with them, and you basically become an off-the-books spy that helps them out doing the War of Assassins. So I guess you could also call that part of the story, considering that you do have to improve those things. And eventually, at some point, you could be recognized by the Landsrod, which I'm not entirely sure what that does for you yet. So I find it interesting because, again, I've played for over 30 hours, and there's a whole bunch I don't know. So this game has a ton of content. And I'm still talking about just solo stuff. I mean, there are things that you're going to be able to do with other people that will go way above and beyond the things I've experienced so far. In conclusion, all around, after 30 hours of play, I have to say this is the most fun I've had with the game in a very, very long time. I actually can't remember the last time I was this addicted and dumped this much time. I mean, the game started on the 5th, and by the end of the 6th, I was at 18 hours of play. And by the end of the next day, I was getting close to where I'm at now. It was nuts how much it just sucked me in and wouldn't let go. I mean, I was thinking about it a lot. I did a lot of research. I was reading things. I was checking stuff out. I was trying to figure it out on my own. It was super fun. I highly recommend it if you like Dune, if you enjoy the survival MMO genre in general, or you just want to play a cool game with base building and some consequences. This one's for you. It does require a lot of time. I'm not going to lie. This isn't a game that you can play totally casually and get a lot out of it. I think that you do need to be able to commit to it pretty hard to get what it has to offer. But if you can, then this is definitely the way to go. I'm not sure about the end game stuff yet. I don't know exactly what that will be like, but the early and middle game is super fun. And even if you don't do that end game stuff, I think you'll get your money's worth before you even get there. Anyway, what do you think? Have you tried Dune Awakening? Do you plan to? Do you like these kind of games? Were you nervous about it before? Have I swayed you? Let me know in the comments. But this is Robert with Society Case Files, signing off.